You did not hurt your dog. You rescued them. You chose them. You brought them home and gave them everything you had. And maybe things are mostly good. Maybe they eat well. Maybe they play sometimes. Maybe most days feel fine. But there are moments, small, strange moments that do not quite fit. They flinch when you reach too fast. They go completely silent when something shifts in the room. They look at you sometimes with an expression that is difficult to name. Not fear, exactly. Not sadness, exactly. Something older than that. And if you have noticed those moments, there is a reason you are watching this video. Because some dogs arrive in your life already carrying something. Not a health condition you can see on a scan. Not a behavior problem a single training class will fix. A history. And that history does not disappear the moment they walk through your door. It lives in the body. Long after the danger is gone, long after the old home is a fading memory, the nervous system keeps its record. Dogs cannot tell you what happened before you. They cannot explain why a raised hand makes them shrink, or why a certain tone of voice sends them under the bed, or why they are never quite fully, deeply calm. But the body holds what the voice cannot say. And once you understand how to read that, how to see the signs for what they actually are, you stop asking, why does my dog act like this? And you start asking something far more important. What did my dog learn about the world before I came along? These are 6 signs your dog may be carrying pain from a life before you. Some will feel familiar immediately. Some will surprise you. And the last one, the 6th sign, is the one most owners never question, because it looks on the surface like the most well-behaved dog in the room. Sign 1, they flinch before they can stop themselves. You reach down to pick something up off the floor. You move your hand quickly to adjust their collar. You lean in fast to catch something falling, and your dog drops. Not dramatically, not a full cringe, just a small, involuntary dip of the head. A flicker backward. A body that moved down before the brain had time to decide anything. And then it passes. They recover. You both move on. You tell yourself it was nothing. But that flinch was not nothing. A flinch that arrives before thought is not a choice. It is a reflex. And reflexes are not born, they are built. Through repetition. Through enough moments where a fast-moving hand meant something frightening was about to follow. According to veterinary behaviorists, involuntary startle responses, the kind a dog cannot suppress, are considered among the key behavioral signs associated with a history of aversive handling or physical punishment. The body learns to protect itself faster than the conscious mind can assess whether a new threat is real. What this means for you is this. Your dog is not being dramatic. They are not testing you. They are not even fully aware they did it. Their body moved to protect them before they had the chance to decide you were safe. The repair here is not rushing in to reassure them the moment it happens. Flooding a flinching dog with immediate affection can unintentionally reinforce the anxiety loop, teaching the dog that flinching produces comfort and attention. The repair is slower than that, becoming so consistent in your movements that the nervous system eventually stops preparing for impact. Slower reaches, softer approaches, hands that arrive with signal, not surprise. You're not trying to convince your dog you are safe. You are proving it one unremarkable, gentle moment at a time. Sign 2. They shut down instead of reacting. Most people know what a frightened dog looks like. They bark, they pull away, they growl. They make their discomfort unmistakably known. But some dogs do the opposite. Something uncomfortable happens, and they go completely still. They stop responding. They seem to disappear inside themselves. Their eyes go flat. Their body goes soft in a way that looks like calm but is not calm at all. This is what behavioral scientists call a freeze or shutdown response, and it sits at the far end of the stress spectrum, well past anxiety, well past avoidance. Most people are familiar with the fight or flight response, first described by physiologist Walter Cannon in the early 20th century. What is less widely known is the third option, freeze, which occurs when neither fighting nor fleeing has worked, or when experience has taught an animal that reacting made things worse. This is consistent with basic principles of operant conditioning, the branch of behavioral science that explains how consequences shape behavior. If a dog growled and was harshly corrected, they may learn to stop growling. If a dog tried to move away and was physically held in place, they may stop trying to move. If a dog communicated discomfort repeatedly and nothing changed, they may stop communicating altogether. And from the outside, that dog looks like they have learned to cope. They look calm, they look manageable, easy, people say. But underneath that stillness is a dog who stopped speaking because speaking taught them that nothing changed. This matters more than most owners realize. Because a dog who has given up expressing discomfort has no runway left before a more serious reaction. When people say a bite came out of nowhere, it rarely did. The dog simply ran out of quieter ways to say it. If your dog goes flat and still in situations that should produce some kind of reaction, do not read that stillness as contentment. It is a signal that your dog needs more safety, more space, and more consistent evidence that when they do speak, they will be heard. Sign 3. They cannot settle in new environments. Take your dog somewhere unfamiliar, a different park, a friend's home, a quiet street they have not walked before. Watch their body, not whether they are excited, not whether they sniff, whether they can actually rest. A dog carrying old pain does not settle quickly in new spaces. Their head stays up, their ears rotate constantly, their eyes scan the edges of every room. Even when they lie down, the muscles stay slightly loaded. Ready. This is hypervigilance, and it is the nervous system's response to having once lived somewhere unpredictable, somewhere where stopping meant missing something that could hurt. Research in veterinary behavioral medicine, including work by board-certified veterinary behaviorist Dr. Karen Overall, has documented that chronic exposure to unpredictable or uncontrollable stress can affect a dog's baseline arousal and their ability to return to a calm, resting state. According to this body of research, dogs who lived with sustained environmental unpredictability may develop stress response patterns that do not simply reset when the environment changes. This is not a training problem with a training solution. You cannot command a nervous system out of hypervigilance. What you can offer instead is something the dog may have rarely experienced: repetition, rhythm, predictability, familiar routes at familiar times. A home where meals, walks, and rest follow a pattern consistent enough that the dog can begin to anticipate what comes next. Not because variety is harmful, but because a nervous system that never learned to trust consistency needs to experience it deeply, repeatedly, before the world starts to feel safe enough to stop monitoring. When the brain finally believes that nothing terrible is coming, it stops scanning for it. Sign 4. They watch you like their life depends on it. This one surprises people because it does not look like a problem. Your dog tracks your every move. They anticipate your moods before you have fully registered them yourself. They're always sitting, always waiting, always reading your face before making any decision. And you think this dog is brilliant, intuitive, deeply attached. That may be true, but there is another possibility sitting beneath it. A dog who has been hurt often learns to read people not purely out of affection, but out of necessity. When another person's behavior was the thing that decided whether a moment was safe, reading every expression, every tone shift, every subtle change in posture would have been a survival tool, not just a social one. The difference between attentiveness rooted in trust and attentiveness rooted in learned vigilance can be subtle, but the body reveals it. The vigilant dog does not relax when they get something right. They immediately look for the next thing to get right. Their posture stays low, careful, slightly braced. They are not enjoying the exchange. They are managing the risk of it. If you recognize this pattern, the answer is not to interact less. It is to make every shared moment feel safer and lower stakes. Shorter sessions, more choice. More moments where your dog is permitted to try something, get it wrong, and discover that nothing difficult follows. Because a dog who is allowed to make mistakes without consequence is learning possibly for the first time that being imperfect is survivable. And for a dog who came from somewhere that punished imperfection, that is not a small thing. That is the beginning of real freedom. Sign 5. They have one reaction that seems completely out of proportion. Everything is fine, and then suddenly it is not gradually, without obvious warning. One specific thing, a particular sound, a certain kind of person, a specific movement, and your dog's entire system floods. And you say, they are fine with everything except this one thing. That one thing is a sensory association their nervous system has not finished with yet. This is rooted in a well-established principle of behavioral science. Since the pioneering work of physiologist Ivan Pavlov in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, research has consistently shown that animals form strong associative connections between a neutral stimulus, a sound, a smell, a visual pattern, and a significant emotional experience. What matters here is this. Pavlov and the decades of research that followed demonstrated that once a conditioned association is formed, it does not simply erase when the original experience stops happening. The association can lie dormant, then resurface powerfully when the sensory trigger reappears, even in a completely different and otherwise safe context. Your dog may carry no conscious memory of what happened. But if a particular sound or the shape of a certain object, or the movement pattern of a specific kind of person was present during a frightening or painful experience, that sensory detail can remain a powerful trigger, not because the dog is choosing to react, but because the nervous system learned accurately at the time that it predicted danger. Do not punish these reactions. Do not force repeated exposure, and wait for the dog to simply get used to it. Research in behavior and learning science consistently shows this approach, called flooding, does not reliably heal a conditioned fear response and can deepen it. What the evidence supports instead is gradual, controlled desensitization, allowing the dog to observe the trigger from a distance at which they can notice it without being overwhelmed, pairing that exposure with something genuinely positive and repeating the process at a pace the dog can manage. You're not trying to make them forget. You're giving the nervous system a new ending to an old association. Sign 6. They have never once pushed a boundary. And here it is. The sign that fools everyone. Your dog does not steal food from the counter. They do not chew things they should not. They do not jump up, demand attention, bark for things, test the fence, or push their luck in any direction. They are, by every visible measure, the perfect dog. And some part of you, the part that made you click on this video, has already sensed that this might not be entirely a good thing. Because healthy dogs test their world. Young dogs push limits not because they are poorly behaved, but because limit testing is how a developing animal learns what is safe, what is flexible, what is allowed. It is not a management problem. It is development functioning exactly as it should. A dog who never tests anything may have already learned the answer. That answer is, trying leads to consequences. This connects to a concept with significant research behind it, learned helplessness. In 1967, psychologist Martin Seligman and his colleague Stephen Meyer published 2 foundational papers documenting this phenomenon. Their research, conducted in a controlled laboratory setting, showed that dogs who were repeatedly exposed to inescapable, uncontrollable conditions eventually stopped attempting to escape, even when escape later became possible. The studies were published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology and the Journal of Comparative and Physiological Psychology. It is important to note that Seligman's original experiments used controlled laboratory conditions and were not studies of domestic abuse or neglect. Specifically, however, veterinary and behavioral scientists have since applied the underlying principle to help explain similar patterns of behavioral shutdown observed in animals with documented histories of aversive treatment. Research across multiple species has since supported the core finding. When an animal learns that its actions have no reliable effect on its environment, it may stop attempting to influence that environment at all. A dog in this state is not calm. They are compliant. And those are not the same thing. Compliance can come from the learned belief that trying leads to consequences. Calm comes from the genuine experience of safety. One looks peaceful, the other is peaceful. If your dog has stopped trying to influence their world, what they need more than commands, more than structure, more than routine, is to discover that their choices are real. Let them make small decisions. Which direction to sniff on a walk, whether to approach something new or wait. Which toy to pick, whether to come closer or stay back. These are not irrelevant freedoms. They are the first evidence your dog receives that they have agency, that this world responds to them differently than the last one did. Because a dog who begins to gently test you, who pushes back a little, asks for something, chooses a direction you did not plan for, that dog is not becoming difficult. That dog is beginning to believe the world is safe enough to want something in it. And that is one of the most hopeful things you will ever see. So, does your dog show any of these signs? For most people watching this, yes, not all 6. Maybe 2. Maybe one that landed harder than you expected. Here is what matters most. None of these signs mean your dog is broken. None of them mean the damage is permanent. None of them mean that what happened in the life before yours will define the rest of their life. Because dogs do not live in the past the way humans do. They read the present constantly, precisely, honestly. When your hands become predictable, the flinch begins to soften. When your home becomes consistent, the scanning slowly quiets. When your voice stays steady, the shutdown comes less often. When your presence stops feeling like a test, they could fail, the desperate watching relaxes into something closer to ease. It takes longer than most people expect. There will be days when nothing seems to be shifting, when you wonder whether you are making any difference at all. But somewhere inside the careful, watchful, guarded dog, the one who flinches and freezes and never once pushes back, there is a dog still deciding whether this life is safe enough to lean into. And every time you choose patience over pressure, you are answering that question. You are not just a new owner. You are new evidence. And for a dog who has only ever known one kind of story, new evidence is everything. If this helped you see your dog differently or helped you understand a moment that never quite made sense before, tell us in the comments which sign you recognized most. Because you are not alone in this, and neither is your dog. If this resonated, hit like and subscribe. We make content to help you understand your dog more deeply, not just how to manage them, but how to actually reach them. Because that is where the real relationship begins.